Sounds great. Thank you, Kelly, and welcome back. Really excited to continue the discussion next with a little bit of a local player. For those that don't know me, my name is Greg Dickman. I'm the Managing Director at Titletown Factory. And one of the things that we looked at when we were looking at areas that we thought there was really opportunity for investment was in the supply chain sector. So really excited to see this group come together. Joined today by really two of the reasons why this region is a leading region when it comes to supply chain and thought leadership. So I'll ask them to each share a little bit about themselves in a moment, but immediately to my left, Paul Schneider is the president of probably the largest logistics organization in the country that nobody's really heard of, organization called KBX Logistics. And I'll ask Paul to give a little bit of the heritage, but it's really an organization that was founded here. It's had tremendous growth, thought leadership, and Paul's been, someone that I've known in the industry since the early '80s, really, and has really, exploded a career here in Green Bay, and I'm excited to let him tell you a little bit about it. To my far left, Mark Ward is the CEO of Schneider. So of course everyone does know Schneider. So probably the leading logistics and transportation company in the country. Has been a foundational company here in Green Bay for some time. Founded here, has recently gone public, and with Mark's leadership, continuing to really, expand and provide, really impactful leadership within the industry. So I want to start with Paul, and just Paul, if you would just share a little bit more about your background, a little bit about KBX, and what brought you to Green Bay.
Okay. Thanks, Jim. Career path probably a little bit different as a result of things that just happened to work out. When I first got out of college, there weren't any jobs. There was a recession going on, and I was really planning on getting a job in the supply chain, but more in an operating role than in transportation. In fact, I never took one transportation class in college. And when I first started my career at Ford Color Paper Company as a supervisor in transportation, the very first question I asked one of my employees was, "How long are trucks?" I had no idea how long are they. And they were very surprised and said, "Well, there's different sizes." At that time, 48 was the longest. And I said, "So are all of them the same size?" And it just showed a level of understanding that I had. But I always believe that if you try to build off of an interest that you have, and then try to do something that's a little bit different, you'll be able to carve out a niche and then allow yourself to expand. So as I mentioned, I started out at Ford Color Paper Company. That's the legacy of our organization. When we first started, when I started, there were 12 of us in total in the transportation area. And we had 3 facilities that we took care of. Over the years, Ford Howard expanded, contracted, went public, went private. Eventually, we got sold to James River. James River then changed the name to Fort James. Then years later, Georgia Pacific bought it, and then Georgia Pacific later got bought by Koch Industries, which is where we stand today. So over the years, when we first started our transportation budget, it was a cost center of about $70 million. We thought we were big back then. We really weren't, but we thought if we could do things a little bit different, we would have a chance. So we have a saying, different isn't always better, but better is always different. So we decided over the years, as we went through all of the different mergers, acquisitions, getting acquired, we always had to go through this process where the objective was always to end up wearing the varsity jacket at the end of the evaluation process. So we always wanted to be able to point that we could do things just a little bit different, and in that case be better, and it worked. So over the years, we've continued been able to bring on more and more responsibilities, more business, and today we have almost 2 million shipments that we manage, over 1.5 billion in freight purchase that we manage. We work with not only Coke companies but also outside companies as well, and continue to grow. So if you focus on the right things, you can grow, and if you have the right team behind you, you can get the right leadership to expand that as well.
Great.
How many team members?
We've got I think 310 now. Yeah, 3. And then we have a large IT organization, and we've got a lot of just like our friends at CH, Robinson, Schneider, lots of other companies in this room. A lot of investment in IT, and so the IT staffs have grown significantly. I think 4 or 5 years ago, we maybe had a dozen people, and now we've got between contractors and internal people we've hired. We're going to be closing in on 100 people here probably by next year. So.
I thought Larkin was windy.
I know. Burning up the class. I don't want to burn the
We'll have more questions unless he filibusters again. I do want to come back though and see when you left college. So your degree in college, you were in the supply chain world when you were in college, right?
No, I was actually going to be an accounting major, and had about one in the morning. I couldn't get a balance sheet to work, so after 3 years of accounting, I walked into my advisor and said, "Here's all the stuff I've got to figure out how to get out of here in another year." So, and they said, "You ought to go into supply chain because you got most of the stuff that you need." So I ended up with an operations management and a marketing degree. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think when I graduated from UW Green Bay too, I didn't necessarily plan on going into transportation, but the industry just kind of sucks you in, and I've got some failed academic credentials to talk with you about as well. But Mark, how about same thing?
Well, I'm actually a product of one of those network optimization studies that John started. My entire career has been in transportation and at Schneider, but when the company first moved a facility outside of the Green Bay area, it was Akron, Ohio, because it was 500 miles from Jersey and 500 miles to Wisconsin, so it was kind of that midpoint. So I started in operations back in 1987, learning the business at kind of a new venture for the company at the time. And for the last 25 years I've been here in Green Bay, and in April I had the privilege of being the 4th CEO in its 85-year history. We have 19,000 associates around North America, 3,000 of them here in the greater Green Bay area. And for our college folks out here, we have 650 UW, GB, St. Norbert's, UW Oshkosh, and NWTC grads on our Northeast Wisconsin payroll. So a big supporter of the local academic world here. But $4.5 billion in revenues, and we started really because of the paper industry back in the 1930s. As most companies grow up around a single industry when they get started. I think it was cheese and paper back then, and now it's virtually everything that moves in the economic drivetrain of this country. All across North America, $4.5 billion in revenue.
Pretty remarkable to think about 19,000 people in an 85-year history, only 4 CEOs, and so it's really unique stability. John before had mentioned a little bit of J.B. Hunt's impact in the industry. I want to go back to Don Schneider, because Don was a real innovator in this industry, really transformed not only the company but the industry. So if you share a little bit.
Sure. I think Don is absolutely still has his fingerprints all over who we are today. Like J.B. Hunt, like C.L. Warner, back in the deregulation time, he made a very large bet that says size and scale are going to matter. And so we grew rapidly so we could be important to customers. I think one of the things we add to Paul is we can cover things in lots of different geographies, lots of different modes. Don saw that, and made big bets and big with vendors so that you can get a cost advantage. And really, what I appreciate about Don, more so now sitting in this chair, is taking the right bets and understanding that what I think he also instilled: don't see the world the way you want it to be, see the world the way it is, and embrace the change, embrace the disruption, and take it on from that standpoint.
Yeah, that's terrific. So many of us, and I spent 8 years at Schneider, seeing the kind of leadership that took place in the industry is really quite remarkable. Paul, coming back to you for a moment with KBX, at some point you made the decision to transition from a transportation department at Georgia Pacific to move beyond moving just GP freight and start to move other freight across the industry for others. What was behind that decision, and how do you think it's going?
Yeah, so go back to the Georgia Pacific days, when we were, when we got to the point where we were able to manage Georgia Pacific freight as well as some of the other legacy freight we had, it actually got us to a point where we had a significant amount of freight, probably 800 million or so, and we got to the point where we said, okay, there's a lot of things we could do if we actually had access to freight that allowed us to better manage our dedicated fleets. Dedicated fleets will allow us to have better service, consistency, all of those things would be good for the businesses that we're supporting. They value those kind of things. And so a number of different times I would go and ask for approval to go and turn our group into a 3PL. I was told no 3 times in a row. Told everyone I would never ask again, but then when Coke bought GP, they asked us to, they looked at some of our results. They thought that things were different, in many cases better, and they asked us to go help other Coke companies. So we tried that. It really didn't work, because if I'm a oil refining company, why would I want a paper company to help me manage my freight? It just didn't make any sense. So I was told, you know what, you ought to ask again if you can spin this off as a separate entity and operate that. So we did that in 2014, 2015 timeframe. We were told yes, so KBX was born, and we have followed through with that exact same mission. We now got about 2,600 dedicated trucks that we operate. We ask carriers to help us with backhaul. Where they have gaps in their coverage, we'll go out and find backhaul ourselves, work with outside companies, and it allows us to do that intended mission. The one thing, though, that has also changed as we started to look at all the different business inside Coke, and then listening to all the different things that we see happening in the marketplace with all the the venture capital being thrown at the supply chain, we saw that there was a tremendous opportunity if we could solve some problems with having a single platform TMS solution that was global. And you could do everything from managing maintenance on tank cars to routing LTL shipments, handling an import from Asia or an air freight going to Europe. And so we decided to set out with that endeavor to build that out so we could do that. So we're a good way down the path of accomplishing that, but that undoubtedly will be a big growth engine for us.
Well, and one of the things as I think and look at both Schneider and GP, KBX, that I think is a common thread is both organizations, one, create real practical value, back to what John was talking about, in solving real problems, but you both have long-standing relationships with your customers and with your carriers. I think some of the customers that were there when Don was there, are still there with Schneider, some of the carriers that you worked with when it was 70 million, you're still working with. So how do you, once you, that position with customers in the marketplace and that customer-centric approach, and then Paul mentioned a little bit about how technology has started to come into play. Mark, you share some thoughts on how Schneider is addressing the technology side as well?
Yeah, well, you think we have 100,000 assets that are out, and like Paul's paper machines, our factories move around the country. And so the ability to make decisions, and now the speed is so much more important. It isn't about taking the facts and thinking about it for 20 minutes and a half hour to get back. Everything is now the speed of commerce, of being able to know what you want, say yes, and then optimize against that very large evolving network. Can't be done by people. It's all decision support and optimization, and continue to keep investing because a tenth of a mile of MPG, one empty mile reduction, additional penny per mile because of your ability to manage that network at that scale is incredibly important. So pennies matter a great deal in our business, and technology is so important to help us manage that complexity. I often get asked, how do you attract people to Green Bay, Wisconsin, knowing that tech is so important, and the data science and the engineering capability and all the things it takes to do that. And what I've really found is, first of all, I think John's sitting out a little bit, the culture of the community is a great place, but you got to get your story out. And people generally want to be around people that they want to be around who are smart, capable, have a great value structure. They want to work on interesting things. They want to do things that matter and have purpose. And if you can start to expose people to that, then the geography becomes way kind of down the list. And we just hired a fantastic individual from NetJets who does behind their whole optimization problem. They can never say no, and they've got to make all the jets and the pilots and all those things available. And it has a very applicable approach to what we do. And hard to get them to come here, but once they got here and saw the people, saw what we're working on, saw the vision of the industry and the organization, it was an easy sell. And I think that's what we just have to keep getting our message out there.
And talent is such an important and critical issue. Paul, I think you probably deal with some of the same things in terms of attracting talent to Green Bay. So how do you think both about attracting some of the things that Paul shared, and what are you seeing that's kind of in the market coming out of the universities? Or if you had some advice for the business teams that are here, what would you share when it comes to talent development?
Yeah, so we have a fairly well-established recruiting approach that we have with a number of different schools. We focus heavily on places like UW-Madison, UW-Oshkosh. Hit the schools over in Michigan, like Michigan State, Grand Valley State. We do a little bit of recruiting out of St. Norbert as well, and some other schools. But we've got people literally from all over the country that have now joined us in our office in Green Bay. The key to that, and I think Mark hit on it briefly, but if you're providing meaningful work and the jobs are interesting, people really want to come here. And it's really important that the dull, dark, mundane type jobs that aren't interesting, it doesn't matter where you're located, people just aren't going to want to hold those. So transforming the way you do work is pretty important now. As far as locally, I would really welcome, kind of sitting down and kind of going through to really form a partnership with the local schools to try to bring a curriculum that would meet some of the needs that we have. All the jobs today require technology. All the jobs today require very intelligent people. We don't have a lot of roles that basically are doing manual tasks. Quite frankly, the only time we do manual tasks is where we touch a customer who doesn't have as good a technology as we do, and we have to manipulate data to turn it into that ways we handle it. So that would be really attractive to to us because if people want to go to school in this area, they probably wouldn't mind living here long term, so.
You know, I think critical thinking skills, you know, I worry a little bit about, you know, commerce and businesses, and the world's a messy place, and we need folks that can think constructively and think differently than people that may grow up differently around them, and these purity tests that you read about, you know, it's a messy world, and people who can think critically and can express a constructive opinion and take some constructive feedback, I think, are the people that long-term succeed.
Terrific. We're about halfway into, you know, our Q&A for our discussion, so think of questions that you want. But John raised a number of issues. There's a number of things that came up, so I'd like to just hit probably 5 or 6 things really quick and get a reaction. So when you think about the economy, kind of how the market's looking and kind of your near-term outlook, what do you see?
Well, it's been an interesting year coming off of just a record 2018. The trade discord, I think, had a lot of disruption in the supply chain, people bringing things forward, kind of impacted the first quarter. So it's been a bit of a different year, and quite frankly, we're a bit more cautious as we head into 2020. I think John hit all the issues coming out of the DC area and the lack of, I guess, progress puts, I think, business cautious. I think we've seen business investment drop much faster than we've seen the consumer side of the business drop, and I think that can be a leading indicator, so we don't want to get in front of our headlights on you know, capacity or CapEx, and so maybe a little more cautious than we came into 2019. You know, John hit on a couple of things that I think policy does matter. I think we're the only industrialized nation that tort is in GDP, and this whole nuclear verdict, social justice as it relates to what happens on an accident. I tell our people, facts now are number 6 of importance. Right?
Well, for folks who may not know that nuclear verdict and kind of what you're talking, can you just give a little bit of background and perspective on that?
Well, it's in so many different jurisdictions now. You know, whether you read about Johnson & Johnson and with Roundup or trucking, $100 million lawsuits for settlement on bodily injury cases, and those are incredibly tragic. And as a company, we step up, and when we're a few times we get involved in that. But when it gets to a jury verdict, there's no reality to, and there's no precedent relative to what's occurring across the country. And so not only our competitors, but other industries are just facing these runaway verdicts, or without the term nuclear, that is upending the insurance markets, it's upending how business is done, and it's quite concerning.
And I'm sure Schneider and a number of other organizations are making huge investments in safety. Can you even share some of the things that, you know, some of the new technologies that you're putting into trucks?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's the right thing to do, but it's great for business. And you know, we have virtually all of our trucks active collision mitigation, and we've reduced rear end collisions by 80%, and then the cost associated with those by over 90%, all based upon the technology and the speed from which you can intervene. And so, again, that's all on the road to autonomy. All those things really matter to the autonomy world. And so those investments, the cameras, the analytics that we do, how we dispatch, all of that is with safety in mind, and we've never really been safer, yet we've never really spent more on risk costs, because of everything that does happen is you know, tenfold what it used to.
And a lot of misinformation about the safety of
You bet.
in the motor public.
And if you would look at what happens on a forward-facing camera on a truck and what the public does around a truck, you would be amazed.
I have absolutely no doubt.
There should be a whole YouTube channel. You should put one of those together.
We're working on it.
Yeah.
Paul, some reflections on the market, how you're seeing the economy, and maybe touches as well on, you know, even from your side, how things like the huge verdicts and the disparity in risk costs are affecting you.
Yeah, so, you know, economically, as Mark mentioned, last year, very different than this year. A lot of inventory build up last year. Working down inventories this year probably led to probably the biggest part of the change there. We might be in an industrial slowdown. I don't know if I would call it a recession, but there obviously is less activity from a truckload standpoint. And so as a result, the freight market is a little softer, and things are more easy to move and ample and all of that. So as we look forward into 2020, it's hard to see anything that is really changing on the horizon that moves the needle greatly, but you never know. These cycles tend to move a little quicker than they had in the past. So you mentioned the nuclear verdicts and things like that. We spend more time now than we probably ever have making sure that we understand as much as we can about the carriers that we hire to haul our freight. We spend more time on contracts. We are very concerned about getting dragged into something, even though we aren't involved in driving the truck or being involved directly in the accident, but getting dragged in on things such as like through vicarious liability or things like that. So it is something that we spend a lot of time on. It would be really good if we could get some tort reform in this country, so there's at least some understanding of what can be expected. The thing that is dangerous now is if you're a small trucking company and you're involved in an accident and you've got $1 million of liability or maybe two if you go with general aggregate, and then there's a $100 million verdict. What are you going to do? You basically are out of business. And obviously every law firm in America realizes that, so that's why they try to bring all the other parties involved, as many as they can into that lawsuit. So.
As long as we're kind of touching on the regulatory side, John mentioned AB 5 of California and the change with independent contractors. As you look at that, what are your thoughts and reflections, and how much does that impact your business?
So Assembly Bill 5, I think what you're referencing is a law that codified into law a ruling coming out of the Ninth Circuit that says you can't be an independent contractor if these conditions apply, and one of those conditions being if who you're aligned with is in the same line of work as your core business, you can't be an independent contractor. But there was a whole bunch of carve-outs, being hairstylists and insurance agents and kind of bartenders and all the important things, I suppose. But certainly the gig economy, Uber, Lyft, and John mentioned, and trucking is certainly the target of this. And in the state of California, there's 70,000 independent contractors that support the port activity and other commerce in intrastate and interstate. And so effectively on January 1, by the rule of law, that would be kind of an illegal practice. And so we've been skating towards understanding where California's gone for a number of years, and we were down to 65 or so independent contractors or owner-operators, as we call them, in the state. Ironically, 80% of them are going to move out of the state to stay with us, as opposed to leave the company. And it's really kind of an amazing number. You read about companies dislocating out of California because of the anti-business climate. You read about it, high-income earners sometimes leaving the state. But we have a great blue-collar workforce, do a great job for us. 80% of those are choosing to move to Nevada, Arizona, or some other state to avoid that. So that was probably a big, percentage-wise, a little shocking to me. We're pleased by that.
This is a lot about the way the relationship you have with your work.
But I think it also has something to do with the elected officials don't understand who they're serving, and those people are voting with their feet, not with the ballot box. But I think it has an opportunity to be incredibly disruptive, right? I was with Uber in a meeting not too long ago. I encouraged them, why don't you just not pick anybody up in the state of California for one weekend? Like one Friday night, one Saturday night. Sacramento would be under siege by morning, right? They have some other thoughts how we're going to approach that wasn't one of them they were going to
No, they don't do that.
But,
So if it does happen, though, you'll know what the origin of the idea was, right?
but to your point, New Jersey is right in line the same way. Then you just think of Washington, Oregon, Illinois, and Massachusetts, the kind of the typical kind of followers of California.
Right.
And it's not good for the industry. It's not good for the individual who's made a decision. If they wanted to if they wanted to be a company employee, they would be one.
Right.
They've chosen to be their entrepreneur, their small business owner, and so what are we really protecting?
What problems being solved?
What problems are being solved? Yeah.
The thing that's so interesting is you think about the gig economy and the idea that more and more people want to basically be their own boss and run their own business or hire on.
Work when they want to work.
Work when they want to work part-time, or work incredibly hard during certain parts of the year, and then they have other things that they want to take care of, family-wise or other interests. And, when you look forward, we could end up with, from a population standpoint, maybe 20–25% of the country, people in the country want to operate in that environment, and this flies directly in the face of that if we saw a portion of that. So I agree with you. I don't think the elected officials have really done a good job of listening to who they're representing.
It's funny when you listen to John and some of these issues, it's possible to get depressed about the transportation industry and say, man, this is a tough business. And it is a tough business, but as you turn that around and think kind of an outlook and, what are the positive things that you see that organizations like yours are doing that really do fundamentally improve the movement of goods and the flow of products and services to people around the country? So give us good news. Thank you.
Well, I think the reason Paul and I have been in the industry for 25, 30 years is because of those people. Even though the world's going digital, relationships still matter, business and collaboration matters. We enjoy the relationship we have with GP because we talk about real issues, we solve real problems, and the world never stands still. And I think what we're seeing, though, is we're moving to more value-added services where we might be doing something more than just moving the freight from A to B. I was down in one of our locations in Illinois and watching one of our liquid bulk drivers who was taking meter deliveries into the farm fields and delivering fertilizers and other chemicals, very prescriptive, very kind of value-added way for both the farmer and our customer. And it just, the pride this person, first of all, it was just an amazing operation, and all the things that the gentleman had to be trained on, know, and do was just phenomenal. And so that's something that didn't even exist and from a technology or capability 5 years ago, and that's where the business, I think, is going to continue to evolve, is how do you wrap around this transportation logistics space real other value-added components that an application on a phone isn't going to solve.
I think as well, there's a lot of uncertainty, as John pointed out when we talked earlier. There are things that we could work on that are outside of that space with such uncertainty, where we can provide better solutions, value-added solutions that allow the entire supply chain to be more effective. So we spend a lot of time working on data analytics, a lot of data science, predictive, prescriptive analytics, so we can provide information to the other parts of the supply chain that didn't have that kind of visibility to what was going to be taking place. And now that they have that, they can actually take actions in their part of the supply chain that actually drives incremental value. So when you really know when a truck or an order is going to show up, when you can plan for a driver arriving and then work to make that driver more efficient when they come onto your property so you can get them out of there very quickly. Knowing what is the right delivery appointment to make as opposed to just taking the first one that's offered. We've made a lot of improvement. We've actually been able to work with some of our customers and point out to them with the data science that by the way they're approaching it, they're actually making it harder for the whole supply chain to operate, and they can create more value just by working with us on it. And we've had great success there. So if the rest of the supply chain gets more efficient, then some of these other things that are going to be pretty hard or require some pretty heavy lifting in the transportation space to work through, we'll still be okay. We'll be okay.
Well, and it's interesting you just mentioned something on the data analytics that struck me because, as we were talking before about some of the large freight matching companies that are coming in many ways what they're trying to do is digitize what you've been doing for the last 25 years. Things that you're working on now, maybe even bring to life a little bit in the predictive analytics and kind of some of the things that you're able to see out of data for creating new value as well. So I think you're doing some fascinating things that you just don't hear about every day.
Yeah. So there's, I'll touch on a couple things that I've kind of briefly mentioned. Just having visibility across the entire supply chain is really important. Transportation being one element of that, but being able to go and look at a supply chain end to end, where you actually are provided insights and the timing that is required so you can actually make a different decision, that's where the real power comes in. So just being able to find out about it, or just to read the news doesn't allow you to impact the news. What we really want to do is provide enough insight so you actually can do some things differently and take action. So a lot of improvement in that space. I mentioned delivery appointments. It's amazing how we decided to take all of the delivery appointment making and basically say, hey, business, I know you know your customer probably better than we do from an individual standpoint. You know that receiver, but as far as data analytics around being able to pick the right delivery appointment, we think we can do, make some improvements which will turn into an on-time service benefit as well, just by selecting the right delivery appointment. And by throwing a lot of data analytics at this, we actually can see when either a person is talking to somebody, they could be emailing somebody, it could be a bot scheduling it. In any case, you go out and say, this is the appointment that actually works the best, and actually push back if you're offered something that gives you a lower probability of making an on-time delivery. Tremendous value created in that space. So it's not just about digitizing everything. You need to be able to actually take action with the insights you gain, so you actually can make a difference. It's not just let's invest a lot of money so everything is digitized. You'll have better storage issue. The way you retain data will make it a lot easier and things like that. But at the end of the day, you want to create real value. So, we've got the ability to, see a truck before it actually arrives to our place to pick up a load. And that way we can inform a facility so they can go and take action. So maybe they can valet the truck for the driver so they can spend 10 minutes on our property instead of an hour, had we not known. A warehouse can leave they know a truck is coming in the next 20 minutes. Well, let's not put a different trailer in that dock with a spotting service. Let's just let that truck come in and spot it right into that dock, and you eliminate some of that inefficiency. All of those things are now possible, and what we're really focusing on is not internally on the transportation, but what can others do with the information that we have in the supply chain. And tremendous benefit being created that way, but it's not possible without support from people like Mark's company and all the others that we work with to make that possible.
Terrific. From the group, any questions, anything that you would like to ask of either Paul or Mark? Yes?
What do you do about driver retention?
It's still one of the largest issues, obviously, that we have as a company, and what we're really trying to do is first of all, how can we be predictable relative to the work? Drivers, many of them, just like we want to kind of know, they might be willing to be out 4 or 5 days at a time, but if they know when they're going to be home, or we can be predictive of those things, and we can get a schedule of compensation and schedule around, and we're doing so much better than we've ever done in our history, yet the expectations keep getting higher. And we've, one of the digital revolutions that's really been a benefit to the driver community is providing a very consumer-grade experience for how they interact with us, from a mobility standpoint, information standpoint, how they connect a home standpoint. So our investments, not only in our base business, a lot of it centers around the driver experience itself, how we select freight, the feedback they give us. One of the great benefits of almost having a Yelp for their experience at a shipper or consignee is that we can give feedback back to a GP. They do a great job anyways, and it's not a big issue. So if we can get this fixed, we'll have a better experience for this driver, a better retention example. And if you don't, we're going to ask our competition to cover it, because we're not going to put our people in that condition for very long. So all of how we use the information has to come back and ultimately drive a better experience for the driver. They have lots of options in the marketplace, particularly in this economy, and it's just the right thing to do.
Where are you looking for? It's kind of hard. Drivers, the average age now is 65. So that new blood is.
Well, amazingly, we're at 25% millennials now in our driver force, and so we've crested over. But you're right. Overall, the industry is skewed to the mid-50s. If you're in the LTL space, it's the upper 50s. And so it's an issue, no doubt.
Other questions? Kelly?
I'll ask the question. As you talk about messaging in the story, I'm curious, how do you let people know about transportation logistics? Not necessarily the concentration here, that's another conversation, but I'm a freshman entering college. What do I know? I haven't experienced supply chain. I don't know what that means. What are the opportunities there? How do we get that messaging to those students?
Paul?
Or what is that messaging?
Yeah, so we have people that are assigned to several of the different colleges that we recruit from, and we've got recognition, name recognition there. We will go in and be a guest lecturer at the school. We'll go and do those kind of things just to make sure that people know what those kind of jobs are and what the opportunities are working for us.
Yeah, I think your question is, we're still too much on the back end of that after they've graduated. I think you're pushing, what do you do on the front end to get people interested in the industry?
Right.
Yeah. It is such a great field because it's the intersection of business, it's the intersection of finance, it's the intersection of engineering. It is at the heart of what companies do. And if you look now, the level of a supply chain officer now reporting directly to CEOs is dramatically different than it was 5-10 years ago. And I think companies have realized that supply chain is a strategic weapon, not just a procurement exercise, and it's buried 3 levels down in the organization somewhere, which, Paul, we started the industry, that's more often than not where it is. And so I think it's rising in prominence around the business community in general, and I think all of those things are a positive to shed light on the critical nature of what we do.
And it's interesting, I end up being on colleges from time to time and speaking, and there's so much change taking place in the market with how things get sold changing and how technology is impacting industries. But one of the things that I think is always great is, no matter what happens, how things get sold change, e-commerce, direct to consumer, stuff still needs to move from A to B.
Not teleporting it yet.
The world will still need to move things. So when you think about a profession that's going to be here for a very long time, and a career where they have the opportunity to make an impact for a very long time, if you become best in the world of thinking how to get products from A to B, there's an opportunity. And so I think that in an area where there's so much uncertainty, this is an industry that can continue to create value for a very long time, and I think creates great opportunities for students and it's fun. And one of Paul's people down here, Brian Figueroa, I see him speaking at college campuses all the time, popping up on LinkedIn. And it is spending time for letting your executives and your senior people like Brian get out there and just interact. Because we as an industry have an incredible story to tell. You know, each one of us probably are more successful than we ever thought we would. In part because the industry gave us an opportunity to do something and create value, and at least in their cases, they took advantage of it. And so it's a great career opportunity. Paul, Todd?
Yeah, John talked a lot about the freight tech world and kind of the money that's being put in there. How are you guys responding to new incumbents, or as an incumbent, how are you responding to some of the new entrants? And then how do you view kind of the innovation that's going on outside of the walls of your organization?
Yeah, Todd, I think one of the things that typically happens is the incumbents who are doing many and all the same things, and because it's necessary to compete in today's world and add value, are doing them. But because we're not out trying to raise money, it's not as publicized, or Freightwaves doesn't have a conference about incumbents. It has, conferences. I was there last week. And so I think that's part of the story, and maybe what C.H. Robinson's dealt with, right? They've come out much more public on what they're spending. We're putting out more press releases than we ever have, just to say, hey, there's things going on besides what you're reading about in the venture capital world. But we're also doing it because it's real solutions, creating real value, and bringing real returns back either to our customers or to the business. And so I don't think our CIO gets frustrated all the time because he'd love to see us spend more time just talking about what we're doing. And so, well, we need to do some of that, but we really need to focus on where the value is being created and how we continue to do that. So it's not being disrespectful to those new entrants, because they are having an impact. They are doing some good things. They are pushing the industry and making all of us respond in some way, shape, or form to certain elements of that. But it would be a misjustice to the folks that are in the industry that we're sitting back being fat, dumb, and happy and just lamenting. So.
Yeah, I guess I would just add that we think very long term with the vendor partners that we work with. We have a mental model that we use inside Coke Industries called virtuous cycles of mutual benefit. We believe that if we work in the best interests of both parties, we'll grow up and be successful together over time. And that provides a little bit of stability, and you don't get so caught up in quarterly earnings results and things like that. The one thing, though, that I would also add is on a lot of the new entrants, there's a lot of just fascinating ideas where people have come up with a solution. So they've invented a solution, but many times they fall short on figuring out exactly how they're going to be able to monetize that so they can sustain it in the long run, but also how do you actually go out and sell it. And the human interaction model still is alive and well in this space, and you have to convince people to actually want to go use that, and you have to have them in a large enough number and in a way they actually can sustain your business. So a lot of times you forget about, I have a really good idea, and that is better than what everybody else has, but it isn't a guarantee that somebody's going to go buy it. And to go and lead with price and then lose, a half, third, a quarter of your operating, cash flow just to buy into to getting that business isn't sustainable.
It's interesting. I just have to ask. Paul mentioned quarterly reports, and Schneider went public not that long ago.
That's right.
How are you finding the world's changed as eligibility a public company?
Yeah, it's unfortunately we haven't changed who we are or the value structure of the company. I think our associates would say we probably don't communicate as rapidly every month and as fast as because of the need to have the non-public information piece, and so that's maybe been a bit frustrating. But I think for the most part, outside of a few of us that have to do things differently and who we talk to and where we go, we've really tried to make that a non-event for the enterprise, and I think our associates would probably give us fairly high marks, and at least not, we don't have a ticker symbol in the lobby, that's not what we want people focused on. We want them focused on creating long-term value, to what Paul talked about. But I wouldn't say it's my favorite thing of the agenda to do, yeah.
I can believe that. Matthew, did you have a question?
Same as Don, I'm good.
Good. Any other questions besides John? John?
You're a guest and everybody beats up on you.
The two of you are very supportive of this effort to maybe help make Green Bay the second coming of Chattanooga. Do you worry at all that a really vibrant startup culture in the transportation and logistics or freight tech area has the potential maybe to drain away some of your top talent, which is probably the most creative talent? Wouldn't you selfishly be better off just sort of keeping a low profile and holding on to all the great people you have? How do you take a look at the talent you have and the fear of perhaps losing it to another company or perhaps a startup idea here in the Green Bay area?
I think competition is good. I think competition is healthy, it makes you better. And if those things happen, it's a reflection of what your employees are finding interesting elsewhere. So you need to pay attention to that and adjust. So I'm not afraid of that. I welcome the competition. I think that'd be great.
Jen, I think I'd answer, we very much have a model of leadership and development of people, and when you do that, you're going to have a lot of great people, and if you do that well, you're going to have a lot of great people that at some point either you have opportunity here or they're going to find opportunity, and Schneider is well represented across railroads, trucking companies, gentlemen sitting up on this table, up on this stage, and so what we want to make sure is that doesn't deter us from developing folks and fearful of that, right? And just goes with the territory. I think what we're learning and what I'm stressing in my role is we want to be very strategic and thoughtful, particularly in this tech space and development and innovation, of what we do ourselves and then what we want to collaborate with others. And either because it'll allow us to get there faster, expand our reach, and so we might even be doing the opposite. We're exposing our people to more outside folks as a way to say, and again, I think that helps us create a vibrant, interesting world as opposed to being insular. And I just don't think we're going to win by being insular, and we'll lose people. We absolutely expect to lose people as part of that process over time. But hire and develop from within is still going to be our long-term most defensible position.
Any closing thoughts, Paul?
I think it's great that this event was put together. I think it's probably one of those things where we need to continue to get out there and talk about what's possible and bring in some great folks from the outside to share their knowledge and insights as well. I think is really, really good. So I'm just really happy that all of you didn't fall asleep sitting here listening to Mark.
Good. Just a terrific job putting this on for everybody who did. I do think we have such a vibrant community of companies of all sizes. Schneider's been around for 85 years and 19,000 employees. We got a number of great companies in transportation and supports areas of all sizes, and maybe this whole effort allows us to start to communicate and collaborate more effectively.
Terrific. Well, thank you both for spending your time and sharing your thoughts. Really appreciate it. So I think we'll wrap this up. And Kelly, do you want to take a couple of minute break again, or?
Yeah, about a 10-minute break, and then we'll close out with Craig.
Awesome.
The keynote.
Be back in
the
10.
marquee.